Welcome, everyone, to the Reading League California's October chapter meeting. This is our first chapter meeting of the 25-26 school year. I'm Kristen Kohler. I am the Director of Membership and Co-Secretary, and I'm happy to have you here tonight. I'm joined by our chapter president, Sharon Dunn. I'll let her say hello as well.
Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending tonight. It's going to be wonderful. We are honored to have Amie Burkholder here, all the way from Virginia. And she will be sharing her knowledge and expertise in all about responding to data. So it's going to be a great night, and we are going to have a second session in December. Is that right, Kristen?
Correct.
Yeah. So I just welcome you, and I'm so glad you guys are here. Also, I just want to state that our mission for the Reading League California is to promote an awareness, understanding, and use of evidence-aligned literacy instructional practices and curriculum in California based on reading science. And with that being said, I'll hand it back over to Kristen, and you're just going to enjoy hearing from Abe tonight.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to read off of the screen. Our membership is our leadership team is all volunteer. We're a nonprofit organization run by educators, administrators, and passionate literacy experts from all over California. Donations and membership dues go right back into our organization. This allows us to continue to bring you free, high quality content, and it helps us increase the knowledge about the science of reading throughout California. We will send resources from tonight's event in a follow-up email. We're going to follow our standard format for chapter events. So this is a chapter meeting. These are a little bit different than some of our other knowledge events that are hosted by our Vice President, Leslie Zoroya. We will have our guest speaker. We will have regional breakout rooms where you can sit and chat for a little bit with people who live and or work near you so you can see what's going on with them. We're going to have some statewide updates. We'll tell you a little bit about our next event, actually plural events. And then if you stay till the end, you have a chance to win Amie's book. We're going to give away 3 copies of her new book. You must be present to win, so stay on the call all the way till the end. With that, I will turn it over to Amie to introduce herself. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to switch over and share my screen. Okay, Kristen, can you see my screen okay?
Hang on. Yeah? Okay, good. Sharon is nodding.
Yep, we're good.
Oops. Cancel that. Sorry, I'm not sure why that popped up there. Okay. All right. So I'm so excited to be here. It is about 9 o'clock here tonight. So if you guys hear my kiddos upstairs, they're snuggling into bed. But I'm so excited to be here with you guys. And I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is data. So this is going to be a 2-part series. So tonight we're just going to talk about data and the 3 pieces that we should focus on when we're thinking about data and how these tools really drive the instruction in our buildings and in our classrooms, and how we can take data to really match in order to support our students. So I am going to jump right in. If you do not know who I am, my name is Amie Burkholder. I'm a K-5 literacy coach. I am still actively in the classroom. I currently work with 2 schools within my district, and I'm a K-2 coach for both of those schools. And I am in classrooms every single day, and we are kind of knee deep in data, which I'm sure you guys probably are at that point too. This is that time of year where we really start looking at everything and creating plans for our students. But I'm also a literacy consultant and PD specialist. That kind of just fell in my lap, and I love what I do. I'm Orton Gillingham and Letters trained, and I am the co-owner of Unlocking SOAR, which is a virtual conference, and I'm the author of a brand new book that just came out in June. And I am excited to be on this journey in education with all of you. So tonight we're going to talk about hopefully by the time we are finished, we will understand the main purposes of assessment. We will learn how to assess and how those assessments inform our multi-tiered system of support decision making. And we're going to begin identifying where your school uses each type. So how this will kind of go tonight is we're going to go through all of the assessments that you may use in your building, from screening to progress monitoring, and how each of those play a role in the instruction that we provide for our students. And then I want to allow you to have some time to really look at a student and think about what that screening data is telling us about that student and how we might be able to create a reading path for them. And then I'm hoping that in December, we'll be able to do a lot more of that as well. So why we assess. So assessments at the end of the day are all about knowing our kids, and they help us really figure out what our student needs. They help guide what we teach, and they show us if our instruction is working. And so that's the important piece. So we do a lot of assessing at the beginning of the year. We spend a lot of time getting the screening done, pulling the data, pulling it together, but it's really all for nothing if we aren't looking at that progress monitoring and making sure that this reading path we've put our kiddos on is actually working. So they kind of also give us, in that same token, not only the information that we need within our classrooms, but it also will give us a window into our instruction as a whole system. So how is our system as a school working? How is our system as a district working? Do we have the right interventions in place? Do we have the right instruction in place? So it's less about compliance of getting those screenings done and more about really making good decisions. So when we think about assessment, we can't talk about assessment without MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered System of Support. It's kind of our anchor. It's the whole idea of providing the right level of support for every student, from having strong Tier 1 instruction to targeting more instruction for our Tier 2 students who need a little bit more support, to really intensive Tier 3 intervention for a few. So assessment is kind of that engine that really makes it possible. So without this reliable data, we can't really make these smart, timely decisions. So when we think about data, we want to really think about the big four. We want to think, I want you to take a look at these questions and really think about how, when we think about assessment, it really comes down to these four questions. And I want us to kind of walk through each one and talk about why they're all important. So number one is, who is on track to meet expectations, and how do we know this? So this is where our screeners come in. They kind of give us a quick snapshot of who is likely to be successful in our Tier 1 instruction and who might need a little extra support. So when we look at our second question, what should we teach next, and what helps us determine that? So our diagnostics will help us really look at where are we, what do our kids need, and how can we best support them? What's next for them? We just spent a lot of time in our district and at the schools that I am in looking at data and creating what we call a 9-week roadmap. So for our K2 students, we really look at that phonics data, where they have those gaps and how we can fill in those gaps. And so what we like to do is create a roadmap to tell us this is where they are based on the data. This is kind of where we want them to be. This is our goal for the end of those 9 weeks. And we're going to map out what that looks like as far as instruction goes for our students. Question number 3 is our instruction working, and how do we know this? So we're going to talk about progress monitoring tonight and where that comes in, but also really thinking about, we've given this screener, we've created a plan, we've created a roadmap for our kiddos, we are starting that instruction, we're going through that instruction, whether it be in Tier 1, 2, or 3. And now we have to go back and say, is it working and how do we know? So we have to set those goals for our students. And then question number 4 is, did all students reach those grade level goals? So this is where we can really use assessments. We can use our screeners to create things like strategic plans to help us figure out where as a whole do we want our students to move, and then where do we want them to move individually. So assessments really help us answer all 4 of these questions. And it's really important that we think about these and have these kind of in the back of our mind as we are looking at our data throughout the year. So let's talk about a universal screener. Universal screeners are quick. We want them to be very quick, and we want them to tell us what we need to know about students. So I like to think of a universal screener as your annual checkup when you go to the doctor. So when you go to the doctor, we all go every year, we have our annual checkup, and it's just really letting us know how we are doing, right? And so it provides quick information to say, okay, if I go to the doctor and they notice that my blood work is off, then they might send me to a specialist to figure out, why is my blood work off, right? So it really flags our kids, and it helps us provide information on that student and at a system level. So when we look at screeners, we can look at students individually if they're flagged for being what we here in Virginia call high risk for reading difficulties. Then we kind of know, okay, we have to look a little bit deeper at this kiddo. But it also helps us look at schools in general. And if we have a lot of students who are being flagged on a universal screener, that's an indicator that we might need to really look at them at that school as a whole and that tier 1 instruction that's happening. So if let's say we go to the doctor and our blood work is a little bit off. Oops, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. I wanted to put in these screener examples that you guys have. These are all screeners that you guys probably use in your schools or in your classrooms. So these are probably very familiar to most of you in California because they are the ones that you guys are utilizing. So let's say that we have a student who gets flagged on a screener, and we know that they might be at high risk for having reading difficulties. So we have to dig a little bit deeper and try to figure out what's going on. Just like with my doctor analogy, I've been sent to a specialist who can help me look and figure out, why is my blood work off, and what kind of plan do they need to put me on to get me back to where my blood work is at normal levels, right? So diagnostic assessments really pinpoint what to teach next, right? They give us more in depth than just the screening. So if we know that within our screener, we notice a phonological deficit, then maybe a diagnostic will help us really pinpoint where our students struggling in that particular skill. They can be formal or informal, and the score is less important than how the student arrived at it. So we're not really looking at like a cut score or a percentage with diagnostics. With diagnostics, we're really looking at what errors are they making and why are they making them, and how can we take that information to help support students and create that plan for them. So here are some examples of some diagnostics that you might use once you have given your screening. You have some phonological awareness and phonics diagnostics, really great reading, decoding surveys. All of these, what they all have in common is that they help us move from identifying that a student is at risk to really understanding exactly what they need next and how we can best support them. So the third type of assessment that we want to talk about is what I really feel like is one of the most important assessments, because even in our district today, we had some big discussions about, we've done our screeners, we've done the diagnostic for those that we're worried about, but how are we going to make sure that these reading plans that we created for our kids are working? And the only way to do that is to do some progress monitoring. So if I take you back to that doctor analogy, I went to the doctor, there was a problem. I went to a specialist. The specialist said, I can help you. Here's what you need to do. But that specialist is not going to then just send me away and let me wait to go back to the doctor a year later. They're going to make some follow-up appointments for me. So that's kind of what it's like for progress monitoring for our kiddos. So they're kind of ongoing checkups, and the purpose of them is to make sure that that instruction is working. So once we provide support, especially in tier 2 or tier 3, we need to check frequently to make sure that it's effective. And so when we think about that, these can be really short, informal assessments, but it's just really important that we do those assessments. So the biggest benefit of progress monitoring is its sensitivity to change. So these tools that we can detect these small improvements over short periods of time, and that's what really allows us to make sure that that growth is happening, and it prevents us from wasting time on instruction that may not be working for our students. Okay. So when we think about all of this and we think about bringing it together, screening tells us who's on track, diagnostic tells us what should we teach next, and progress monitoring is that instruction working? So when we think about that, we want to figure out how we can take all of this knowledge and take this data into action. So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about assessments and how they can be helpful. But the real power really comes when we apply those to actual classroom situations. So we're going to talk about a student and walk through some scenarios that will show us what happens when a screener flags a student, which diagnostic tools to use next, and how to really use those progress monitoring tools for our next steps. And so then after that, what we'll do is we'll do one together, and then you guys can do one in your breakout session and really talk about it within your districts about tools that you might use and screeners that you use or diagnostics that you use, and how you might try to help figure out some of these reading difficulties that our kiddos are having. So if we look ahead, our student is a first grader who was flagged on nonsense word fluency screener. So they were below the benchmark. I want you to think, and I'm going to open up the chat here, on what you think, what diagnostic would you use to kind of help figure out what's going on with a student who is below benchmark on the nonsense word fluency screener, and what we would teach next. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to pull up the chat. And I want you guys to just think about, if you have a student, and you probably have a student in your classroom right now that was flagged for something very similar. So take a minute and think about that. Think about real students in your classroom and think about what your next step might be. All right. I see someone might give a core phonics screener. I think that's a great place to start. Anyone else? Maybe some letter sound knowledge. Yeah. Maybe if we're thinking about our kiddos from not being able to decode nonsense words, sometimes what we often forget when we think about letter sound knowledge is that they may know their letter sounds, but where they might be a little shaky is in the automaticity of that, right? There could be a phonemic awareness. Are they able to blend and segment words? So these are all things that we have to look at to kind of figure out and get to the root of. So I love that I see a phonemic awareness screener. I see a phonics survey. Letter sound knowledge, I think, is a very valid thing to give our students. Yeah, good job, Leslie. I love it. Yeah, you want to look and see, are they able to read real words, right? Yeah, that's very true, Leslie. Sometimes our kids have a hard time tracking. So that's a very valid point. All right. Very good, guys. See if I can move to the next screen. Here, it's not wanting to move me very well. Well, I don't know. My mouse is giving me a fit. Hang on a second. There we go.
There it goes.
All right. So what diagnostics should we give? You guys did a great job. I just kind of put some that I would give based on, my location and where I am. I know you guys have different ones in California. So we want to look at the phonics screener. We would want to really look at that phonemic awareness piece. And these tools are really going to help kind of dive a little deeper and pinpoint which phonics skills are they shaky on? Are they shaky on those letter sounds? And really, really look closely at that. Very good. All right, so this is where I want us to, I think what we'll do, Kristen, because I'm a little bit early, maybe we'll go through this one together, and that'll give you guys time to do your breakout sessions the way you typically do, and they can talk about their screeners. Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'll help read the chat too.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So when we think about all of this, I want you to think of what kind of information would that give us. So if we think about the diagnostic would tell us if the student is solid with CVC words, but gets stuck on maybe blends or digraphs, or maybe they're able to decode simple short CVC words, but they haven't learned the long vowel patterns, or perhaps they're confusing sound symbol correspondences, which you guys said, you both said letter sounds and phonemic awareness. So those are both important. All right. So when we think about our instructional steps for this student, we want to know where the exact gap is, right? So we might place the student in a tier 2 group focused on that specific phonics skill that they need. We would obviously want to provide explicit and systematic instruction on whatever skill they're struggling with, whether it be, like we said, those letter sounds, or maybe they're just struggling. Maybe that nonsense word had a lot of digraphs or blends, and we notice they're struggling with that. And that diagnostic is going to really help us determine that. We would use decodable texts that align to that skill, and we would continue to monitor progress every 2 weeks to make sure that the instruction that we are giving our student is working. All right. So let's look at another one. This is a second grader who has been receiving tier 2 decoding intervention in a small group setting. Progress monitoring has been administered every 2 weeks, and after 4 weeks of intervention, the student's data shows no growth. What should the teacher and or the team do next? So think about that, and we will talk about this together in the chat.
We're going to give you some think time, but you can also come off mute. There might be a lot of words involved in what to do next for this kiddo.
Yeah, I'd love an open discussion. That'd be great. Feel free to do that. So if they're in that intervention, we already have determined that they're having some struggles, and we created a plan for them based on that diagnostic data, and we've placed them in this intervention, and now they're not making a lot of progress. So what does that flat data tell us about the current intervention that they're receiving?
Do we know anything about the amount of time that they're in intervention? Like, is it 5 days a week or 20-minute sessions or 30?
I'm going to go with what is typical for us, which would be a kiddo and tier 2 intervention would get 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And it would be in a small group setting. These are good questions. I love that you guys are asking questions about it. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat about what assessment was being used to monitor progress, and does it match the intervention that's being provided or the skill that they're intervening in? So that's a great point. One suggestion is to increase the time or the intensity of the intervention, or maybe a smaller group size. Perhaps looking at processing challenges, making sure that it's a small group, or maybe a one-on-one is needed. Could there be a speech or vision issue? The instruction needs to be adjusted. You guys are zeroing in on it. What is the student's engagement like during the session? And maybe the intervention doesn't match the deficit. Are there distractions in the group? Oh, never.
I love that. These are real teacher responses.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. And they're coming quicker now, so they're scrolling by quickly, increasing the time if possible. I love that you're leaning into MTSS, increasing time or intensity. Is the intervention matched to the skill, or is there more foundational skill that's missing for the student? Nice, nice. And then finally, decrease the input or check and make sure that the student is not a second language learner. Also, did the other students in the same group show growth or no growth? So Good job. Once their juices get going, they're busy.
That's what I was just thinking. I said, I've got a list of things that I would talk about, but they have covered that and so many more. My next question would be, would you automatically change the intervention? You can just give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down. What do you think? Do we just automatically jump to changing that intervention, or would we take a pause and kind of ask these questions with our MTSS team? Yeah, not necessarily, right? We would want to know all of these things. Pause and ask these questions. Yeah. So I put, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that we would look and see maybe the intervention obviously is not effective, but why? So we might revisit the diagnostic to confirm the skill focus. We might adjust the intervention and intensity, which someone said maybe smaller groups, more time, more frequency. You guys all said that. Make instruction more explicit and systematic. I would also want to know what the cumulative review portion of the lesson looked like. Is there enough of that built in? Do they have enough repetition there? And then if we made those adjustments and there just wasn't really any growth after that, we might consider tier 3 or maybe a different approach. But you guys did a great job.
Mhm.
Yeah, Sarah says she wants to know what is considered enough progress to consider it an appropriate growth for the time frame. And that's a great question. So that would be determined by your progress monitoring, what you would use. I know that here in Virginia, we have progress monitoring that we use that aligns with our screeners. And so we would have those kind of thresholds of where that expected growth would be, but also looking at, we've placed them in this small group. If everyone else is making that progress and we have one that is not, we might want to look at where, might need to look a little bit deeper at that student. Yeah, these are great questions. Yeah, somebody said that. Janine said, did the students in the same group show growth or no growth? Yeah, wonderful. Awesome. So we are going to, I think, break out into our breakout session now. Kristen, is there a certain one that will you just put me into one?
Yes, I
Okay.
will. Let me pull that up on the screen. And so while I'm doing that, um, you all can self-select your breakout rooms. But before we do that, I wanted to make sure, are there any other questions that you guys have?
I have a question for you guys for December. I've kind of been rolling this around in my head for like a month now and how to lay this out with the first session and the second session. Do you like these scenarios? Would you like them to be more specific? Would that be a good work session for you guys for that December session? Or would you like to dive deeper into one of these assessments? So would you like to dive deeper into your screeners or diagnostics or progress monitoring? So if you just have like maybe 1 minute to put it in the chat, what would feel good for you guys in December, that would help me make sure that I am hitting the mark for what you guys need as well. See progress monitoring.
Yeah, keep adding those in the chat. I will save the chat, Amie, and share it with you.
Okay.
Amie's going to come back and do a part 2 in December because our format is sort of split 50-50. We felt like it would be more fun to talk about this once and then
Thank you
step
for
back.
dinner. It was very good.
Oh, well, glad you liked it.
If you're
I
off,
get to go
mute.
into a
Go ahead and
breakout
mute
room.
yourself. All right, let me advance my slides here. So our standard format for our chapter meetings is to allow you some time to make connections with others. We facilitate that by hosting a breakout room. One of our main questions that we always get from our members is, who's doing this work near me? Where are the people close to me who are doing this work? And so if you take a look at the screen here, you will see that we've tried to break the state up into regions that are somewhat close together. So take a look and see which room number would put you in a space where people who live in the same region that might be near you. Room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, room 5, room 6. And we have about Where did I see how many people we have? We have about 50 people on. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the 6 rooms, and there should be 6, 7, or 8 of you. It depends on how it goes. But if you end up in a room by yourself and nobody else is there, come on back out, exit the breakout room, and we'll let you choose, or we'll place you in another room. So I'm going to advance to the next screen, but it also has these numbers on it. So if you haven't remembered your number yet, you're going to get a second chance here. So room 1 is Bay Area. Room 2 is Central Coast or Central California. Room 3 is the Inland Deserts. Room 4, North Central. Room 5, very Northern California. And then room 6 is the South Coast. You can kind of see those regions broken out there. We're trying to support some of the work that you're doing with universal screeners. So when you get into your breakout room, you have a couple of things to do. Someone should just designate themselves to be the facilitator and sort of keep you all on time, so that everyone gets a chance to talk. Do some quick introductions. And by quick, I mean just say your name, where your district is, and your job title. And if you spend too much time on that, you won't have time to talk about the thing. And then you can discuss really anything that's top of mind for you. We are going to try to anchor our work to your universal screening this year. Have you administered it yet? Have you administered a diagnostic that Amie explained? And how will you use that data to inform your instruction? So you can also talk about these case studies and how you might respond. The choice is yours. Have fun. If you get stuck, send somebody out to the main room and we'll help you out. All right, that said, I am going to stop share. Before I open up the breakout rooms, are there any questions?